YouTube, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to talk to you about zone 2 training and why, especially if you're looking to improve your running, it is something that it is something you want to include in your program, and also how to actually go about zone 2 training, because quite a few people say they're doing zone 2, but they're not. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it in this presentation. So first of all, when we're looking at zone 2 training, what actually is it? It's quite a popular term in terms of, sort of, you may be told you need to do this run at zone 2 and you're thinking, oh, what the bloody hell is this? So zone 2 is low intensity aerobic training, and typically 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. Or what you could look to do is your 180 minus your age would roughly put you around there as a start point. So for me, 180 take away 25 is 155. So that's roughly my zone 2 heart rate. Or what you can do is, if you have something like a watch fitness tracker, it will basically tell you what your zone 2 is, and it will tell you if you're in or out of that zone when on your run or cardiovascular session. So roughly what it is, it's like a 3-4 out of 10 conversational pace, something that's nice and easy. Again, if you're not got a fitness tracker, you could do something talk test, so something that's conversational, and it's basically see it as zone 2 is the zone you want to be in to help build your aerobic base, build your foundation. It's going to help you with that solid base of overall endurance without causing too much stress on the body, which your other sessions may be prescribed to do. Okay, so reasons why this matters: a solid aerobic base will help with stronger foundation for all other training. So like I said, if you've got a nice big base of an aerobic capacity, your ability to then work at higher thresholds and higher percentage of your heart rate in like tempos or intervals, as you can see here, is going to be far greater. So if you're lacking an aerobic base, there's only so much you'll be able to do when it comes to that tempo-based session, threshold, intervals, etc. From a scientific perspective, it helps strengthen capillaries, which is therefore going to be better for oxygen delivery. So again, you can see here, your zone 2 is that building block. It's that foundation, that first proper foundation of your sort of cardiovascular training. So in terms of common mistakes that are made, this is definitely something I used to do a lot. It's quite funny because I didn't get a fitness tracker watch or track my heart rate on my runs until probably the start of 2024. By that point, I'd already done an ultra marathon, half marathons, and I just thought, I know what my easy run is, and just stuck to that pace. When in reality, probably just let my ego take over, because I didn't want to be seen as going slow, but it needs to be done. Most people don't understand zone 2, and like I said, potentially are not actually getting the benefits. They're almost in like a grey zone of zone 2, zone 3, or they're not in that zone 2, which is the whole point of that session. What's the point in doing a run or a cardio session where it's meant to be zone 2, but you're in zone 4 or 5? Okay, it's just, what's the point? I think for me, it's harder for a lot of people. It's harder to remain in zone 2 than it is to do max effort sort of intervals, for example, because zone 2 stuff is normally quite long, quite boring, slow duration. It requires a lot of discipline. So that's something I definitely think is true. Whereas, if you're max effort 400 meters, you can do that on that given day because it's short, sharp, and you can give it your all, which sometimes is a little bit more fun to do. But yeah, this is, again, fitness trackers, heart rate monitors are great because they'll be able to sort of track your heart rate, giving you sort of allowing you to understand, right, do I need to push a bit more? Do I need to pull back? And without zone 2, your progress will stall. As I said before, in terms of how to stay in zone 2, heart rate method, 180 minus your age, which is roughly sort of your zone 2. But I'd highly recommend to most people and all my clients to have some form of fitness tracker. I've got a Garmin Forerunner 265. I then also have the Garmin heart rate monitor, which I just find a little bit more accurate. But that's got all the data from my heart rate and my runs that I know, and the watch knows, this is the green zone for your zone 2. This is where you need to be. And when I'm running, it will then also, if I'm going a little bit too quick, it will almost tell me that slow things down, or you're going into that next zone, which is not the idea of the session. Talk test, again, if you can't speak, you're going too fast. You could also try nasal breathing to help in zone 2. So just breathing in and out through the nose, because this will make you almost have to go at a pace where you're able to do that, which will naturally slow you down. So slowing you down will obviously therefore allow you to not have to push as much, therefore keep that heart rate in a lower zone, which is obviously what you want. Typically, I would be starting with 1 to 2 zone 2 sessions per week. This could be 30 to 60 minutes. So it could be 2 forms of runs. It could be 1 run. It could be 1 on the bike, a little bit less impactful on the joint and a lot easier to stay in zone 2 on a bike in comparison to a run. And then gradually you can obviously increase the distance, and then depending on what you're training for, you then may look to include your tempo based efforts or your threshold runs. But in terms of benefits of zone 2, obviously I'm going to talk through sort of why we do it, but some actual benefits will be lower resting heart rate. It's going to be a more efficient heart, which is great for overall health, taken away from a performance aspect. Zone 2 training is phenomenal for longevity, cardiovascular health, and obviously, like we say here, a more efficient heart, which is obviously something that we all want, the most important muscle of the body. It's also going to allow you to run faster at the same effort, because it's going to help improve pace without any sort of extra stress on the body. You're going to be able to recover better because your heart rate's lower, your ability to recover is going to be far superior. And it's also something that's sustainable for training volume. So zone 2 is brilliant because you're building time on your feet, you're building endurance without sort of causing too much stress on your body internally through the CNS, through your central nervous system, but also through the joints and everything else. Because if you're just running at between 75 and 100% with your runs 3 times a week, it will lead to burnout and you won't enjoy it either. That's something I used to do, was just run every run as quick as I could. And it got to a point after probably 6 weeks where I couldn't run any quicker, and my motivation to run just dropped, and I stopped running because I was seeing no progress. When in reality, if I could go back, I wouldn't have done that, and I would have included some sort of zone 2 runs. So who should use zone 2? Now, for me, everyone should have some form of zone 2 training in their program, whether you are 18 years old, 35 years old, 70 years old. Zone 2 is going to be very, very important for longevity and for health. If we look at it from a more performance aspect, marathon runners can build 70 to 80% of their mileage in zone 2, giving them that big aerobic base where they can then utilize more speedier sessions to help run the race that they want to do, for example, a marathon. Obviously, like overall, people who train in more of a hybrid manner can use zone 2 for conditioning whilst also maintaining strength. And with hybrid training, obviously, you're balancing strength, running, and other disciplines. The zone 2 stuff is not going to be too taxing. So maybe on days where you double train, zone 2 conditioning could be part A, and then the afternoon, your strength session is not going to be too negatively affected because of the low impact and intensity of that morning session, whatever it may be for your conditioning. Again, everyday individuals, people that just want to stay fit without sort of fatigue all the time, and also people returning from injury. It's low stress and it's nice, it's a safe re-entry point. So if you're coming back from an injury, and you were doing 3 runs per week, you might look to do 1 run per week to begin with and 1 bike session, and then slowly build that up. And then you might go 2 runs, 1 bike session, and then eventually get back to all 3. Because the bike's brilliant. You're still going to be in that zone 2. I know the modality of training is different, because obviously if you're training for a marathon, you want to try and run as much as possible, but then obviously there's that fine line between doing too much, and that's where injuries may occur, and where you might want to pull things back and look to utilize a bike as well to help you get into that zone 2 sort of range. But there we go. That's a little bit more on zone 2. It isn't too easy in terms of it's not a walk in the park, literally. It's just see it as the building blocks. They're allowing you to spend more time on your feet, lower injury prevention, and just build that aerobic base that we've spoken about to allow you to then run more intense or perform at high levels of intensity in other disciplines of training. It's about training smarter, not harder. I think the reason why a lot of people struggle to stay in zone 2 is from an ego. They don't want to be seen running slow, especially on like Strava. When in reality, if I see someone who has gone zone 2 run and they were running quite slow, but they remained in their zone 2, I think that's more impressive than someone saying zone 2 run and their heart rate was 170 on average, because they clearly don't understand zone 2 training. And then finally, obviously, build your engine, which is this aerobic capacity that we've spoken about through zone 2 training, and then layer on intensity as you progress, or dependent on what the goal is. But I think zone 2 training is something that should be in your program consistently throughout, something that I definitely will keeping my training program all year round, depending on what training block I'm in. Obviously, for endurance events, a lot of my training has been zone 2. But even now, as I enter more of a strength training focus, I'll still keep zone 2 training in, just for the sort of heart health benefits and just maintaining overall fitness. So there we have it. A little bit more on zone 2. Make sure you get it in your training. It is super important. And if you found this video useful, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.